Hello, Guardians. I wanted to put together a summary video of the Season of the Hunt lore as it stands currently because a lot has happened. Don't worry though, because this isn't going to affect my production of Kraken Mare or any of the other videos I have planned. This is just in addition to it. So one of my viewers, Ben Buckton, brought the Destiny web lore to my attention. Though I have read Immolent Parts 1 and 2, I really wasn't aware that there was this entire series of web lore out there. So thank you for that, Ben, I appreciate it. I will do a full reading of Immolent Parts 1 and 2 because this lore book is freaking awesome. But that's going to have to wait because, like I said before, I have lore readings planned already that I've been talking about here lately, and so I'll probably do this one after those. That being said, I did want to talk about this because, I'll say it again, this lore book is awesome. But that lore book is not the only part of the Season of the Hunt lore. We also had the Call of the Cryptolith, which if you haven't read yet, I actually just did a reading of it, so I'll put up a card in the corner and you can go check that out if you haven't listened. Literally, as I was posting this, I saw on the Destiny lore subreddit that there was a new lore book added to Ishtar Collective. This is on the Spider and the Crow. So if you notice a slight jump in the Spider and the Crow part of this summary, that's why. Because I had to go ahead and add it as it ties in completely with the theme of this video. But as I see it, there are three main parties at play in the Season of the Hunt. The first is Osiris, Sagira, and Saint. The second is the Crow and the Spider. And the third is Xivu Arath, Savek, and the Wrathborn. So I'm going to go ahead and cover each party individually. And obviously spoilers for those who have not started the hunt yet, but if you haven't, why the hell are you here? Go do the first mission and then come back to this video. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody that's here has played the first mission and we are good to proceed. So we're going to start with Osiris and Sagira, and we're going to kind of give a synopsis of Immolent Parts 1 and 2. So at the beginning, we see Osiris trying to convince Zavala and the Vanguard to assist him in trying to figure out what happened to the planets that disappeared with the arrival of the pyramids. Zavala declines to send forces as they're tied up dealing with Aramis and House Salvation, but he offers operational support. It's revealed that Osiris has been writing poetry, and Sagira asks him if he has shown it to Saint 14 yet. This will become important in a bit. Osiris goes to Mars, Io, Titan, and Mercury, and he finds voids where the planets once were, just black voids. Yet they still behave exactly as the planets did. Here's a little physics tidbit for you. Our solar system is an extremely complex system where every body has a gravitational effect on every other body, though most are extremely tiny, like for instance, the gravitational effect of Saturn on Earth is extremely tiny. But you can imagine that in such a complex system, if you were to remove a planet, all those tiny little effects will add up and become noticeable. Some of these rogue moons would eventually maybe leave their orbit or go into the sun. It's really hard to tell because with a system this complex, a mini-body problem, as physicists would call this, all of it can get so complex that it really can't even be calculated with an extremely powerful computer. We just don't know, but what we do know is that it would not be good for the system. So good thing that that didn't happen. Apparently, these voids behave exactly like the planets used to, or gravitationally at least. Clearly, they do not emit or reflect any light as they are completely black. Exactly what they are is unclear, possibly some sort of singularity that has the exact mass of each planet. Stay tuned for future lore drops for an explanation of that. But anyways, later we find out that Sagira had secretly sent Osiris's poem to Saint, and that Saint had sent a letter in return saying he liked it. Again, put a pin in this, it's going to become important here in just a second. So, Osiris visits Anna in the tower, and he asks her about a strange tone that the lighthouse on Mercury was emitting, asking if she had heard anything similar on Mars when the pyramids had taken the planet. She says she hasn't. So he then goes to talk to Saint 14 to tell him that he's leaving, to try to figure out what this tone was and what the darkness is here for, what happened to the planets, etc, etc, etc. There's a lot of questions in this season after the darkness has taken over its system. But when he tells him this, Saint attempts to get him to stay, telling him that he doesn't need to go out there and kill himself. He's, becoming an old man now. He's been alive for a long time. He even fondly touches Osiris's chest and calls him his fiery bird. They then embrace, and Osiris wishes for a time when this is enough for him. So, since this lore drop, it has been revealed that Saint and Osiris are indeed gay. and that they do in fact love each other in a non-platonic way. So if you followed this at all, you'll know that the revelation has been somewhat controversial. It was never explicitly stated in the lore. In fact, sometimes they referred to each other as brothers. However, there have been subtle hints here and there, such as what I highlighted above. And once you know this fact, if you go back and look in the lore, I promise you'll see what I'm talking about. So, I want to draw a very fine line here. I totally understand that some people are not pleased with this. Again, it really wasn't explicitly stated, and with them calling each other brothers, I can understand that confusion. We should not condemn people for not getting subtext, especially when different people can have different readings. This is fiction, and that type of work is a semi-separate entity from the author. If it isn't, then we're left with J.K. Rowling. However, there is a subset of those that are decrying this for other, less nice reasons, let's say. And obviously that is not okay. So personally, I'll say that I was confused at first about this, but after going back through the Osiris and Saint lore, I can see where the clues were. But regardless, it is now canon that Saint and Osiris are indeed in love with each other. So boom. Does Bife give these kind of hot takes? No? That's probably pretty smart of him. So next we see Osiris receiving a transmission from Kayatl, the daughter of Calus. She's offering a tribute, apparently to Xivu Arath. One thing to note is that Calus and Kayatl do not get along. She does not approve of his ways and actually instigated a rebellion against him in the past. So it appears that she is siding with Xivu Arath to overthrow her father. Osiris goes to the Tangled Shore and finds a Wrathborn ritual there, where the Cabal soldiers are being converted and growing Hive Chitin. Xivu Arath speaks directly to Osiris, saying, quote, "I am the war you crave, purpose eternal, a legacy in blood. When you draw blades, you draw me. You cannot resist without invoking my banner. Embrace me, Lightbearer, and be a god of death." She is clearly trying to convert Osiris. So Osiris fights these Cabal Wrathborn to get away, and one cool side note here is that we see him transition between a Dawnblade and a Stormcaller with extreme ease. And this sort of highlights a fact that we already knew, which is that Osiris is an immensely skilled warlock. So next, the two visit the Spider in the Tangled Shore, and he tells them to visit the Dreadnought on Saturn, Oryx's old ship, which they do, and there they find out about Xivu Arath and exactly what the Hive God is doing here. Now, I will go into detail in that later when we get to the third party that I spoke about above, but for now I want to focus on Osiris. In the Dreadnought, they are again led elsewhere to Earth's moon, Luna. The two go to Luna, and there near the pyramid, they find a cryptolith. Around it are many Hive nobles, and even the Hive celebrant of Xivu Arath. Though Segura protests, Osiris decides to fight them by himself, and this fight is glorious. Again, we see Osiris switching from Dawnblade, throwing a Nova Bomb, using his Chaos Reach, and then back again, all as if it's basically nothing. He tears through the Hive nobles, but then he gets to the High Celebrant. The entire time, Xivu Arath is still whispering to Osiris, telling him that by the very act of killing these Hive, he is actually worshipping Xivu Arath, as Xivu Arath is the Hive god of war. So, according to that logic, there is no way for Osiris to win here. He either dies or he worships. Apparently, this High Celebrant is just too strong for Osiris. He's even able to completely nullify his Well of Light and throws him like a ragdoll. Osiris realizes he's going to die, and he tells Segura to run. As he's dying, he thinks of Saint again. And here's another little point. He thinks, quote, "There is one where Osiris finds happiness. He finds a time away from strife. He finds Saint, a dream of warm serenity, the peace to his purpose. With Saint, there is a future that could have been enough." Segura doesn't listen to Osiris, and she stays. She protects him with what is described as an Aegis of Light. This is reminiscent to the Vault of Glass in the Aegis that Kabir created there. Segura dies, saving Osiris. And that's exactly where we find him at the beginning of the season of the hunt in the first mission, still being protected by Segura's light. That was pretty heavy. Really sad to see a character like that die, even though I still have her ghost shell. which is kind of strange now that I think about it. It's almost like I am carrying around her corpse. Anyways, we're now on to the second party of this season's lore, the Crow and the Spider. Everybody knows who the Crow is. He killed Kate. Enough said. Or, well, actually he didn't, because the Crow is not really Uldren Sov, in the same way that Banshee isn't really Clovis Bray. If you read Legacy's Lament, or you listened to it, again, card up in the right for those who haven't, you'll know that Banshee is Clovis Bray, though he doesn't have any of his memories. And where Clovis was this narcissistic sociopath who sacrificed countless humans in order to attain his own goals, Banshee sacrificed himself 43 times just to save people that he had barely just met right after he was born. So clearly there is this theme of second chances, of being reborn without one's memory, and using that chance to further some good in the world. From all the appearances and dialogue we see this season, the Crow seems like a changed man. He states that he wished he knew our guardian before he died, as we might have saved him, which is ironic. He expresses concern for others, even us, and even seems a bit naive, allowing the Spider to hold sway over him. The Spider, for his part, has put a bomb inside the Crow's ghost, who is named Pulled Pork, to make sure that the Crow doesn't step out of line. So basically, the Crow is now part of Suicide Squad. For those who aren't aware, after Forsaken, Uldren was reanimated by Pulled Pork, and without his memory, he was forced to live on the outskirts of society, in the Tangled Shore. Obviously, people would recognize him and cast him out wherever he went, though he had no idea why. Well, finally, he was found by the Spider, who, as we know, is very pragmatic, and he took him in. So we get more added to their story in the brand new lore book, A Tangled Web, showing us how the Spider and the Crow first met. We see Crow wrestling with his inability to remember his past, asking Pulled Pork who he was, but getting no answer. He gives Pee-Pee a new name, calling him Glint. So that's how I'll refer to him now, though I do like the abbreviation Pee-Pee because I'm a child. He even shakes the hand of the ghost with his finger. It's unfairly cute for this former monster, meant to make us empathize, and damn it if it didn't work. A Titan happens upon the Crow, and recognizing him as Uldren, pops his hammers and basically executes him without saying a word. Of course, the Crow is later revived by Glint, and they stay really silent for a while. The Spider found the Crow sometime later floating in the vacuum of space, constantly dying and being reborn. He offers Crow a partnership, and Crow naively accepts, as he is probably the first person to show him any sort of kindness. We next see Crow on Mars helping another guardian, Ruiz. After the run-in with the Titan, he hides his identity carefully and runs off after a few moments of chatting with her. Later, we see him fighting the Scorn, and it appears for a moment that one of them recognizes him, though no words are shared until the Crow guts it with a sword. As the Scorn raider dies, he repeats one word over and over again: Father, 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 Father. We see a conversation between Glint and the Spider, and come to find out that Glint indeed knows who the Crow was. Spider gets angry when Glint tells him about the warlock Ruiz on Mars, who recognized him as an Awoken, but not his identity. Spider is clearly worried about people finding out about who the Crow was. Then, right in front of the Crow, he snatches Glint from the air and renders him unconscious, and modifies him. So he says. Crow finds out that it was a bomb, and Glint tells him to leave, but Crow refuses, because Glint is his only friend. So it appears that right now, Crow is putting up a front, pretending to be loyal to Spider to survive. Talk about an abusive relationship. So finally, the third party we have in this season are the enemy: Savek, Xivu Arath, and the Wrathborn. Now, Savek is covered in the Call of the Cryptolith lore, which again I did a reading on, and her crew was sent to the Tangled Shore to take apart a ketch from the House of Kings. While there, she found a black obelisk that grew into the larger ones we see in the Wrathborn hunts, the Cryptoliths. This Cryptolith whispered to her and eventually caused her to evolve into something greater. It's done the same thing to the other alien species that come in contact with it, just like the Cabal, as we saw in Immolent. These Cryptolith towers are controlled by Xivu Arath, who is Oryx's sister and the hive god of strength and war. Xivu Arath is a night morph, and her worm inside her forces her to continually test her strength. This gives her immense power and makes her immortal. Before the end of Call of the Cryptolith, we see that Savek is drawn into what appears to be Xivu Arath's throne world, ostensibly to be given a mission. And the last time we saw Xivu Arath was in Forsaken, when she had begun to send her forces to the Sol System. In particular, we saw Migor, spawn of Xivu in the Prison of Elders, and some of her other forces in the Dreaming City. Now, this High Celebrant is this overgrown knight that we see in Imolent and then in the first mission of this season, when we rescue Osiris. It's unlikely that we'll actually come into face-to-face with the Hive God this season. Instead, this High Celebrant is probably going to be our final boss. He is basically Xivu Arath's ambassador of war, her general. So it's unknown what the final goal of Xivu Arath is, though she is notably much less crafty than Savathun. It's more likely that she is trying to do something more direct, perhaps creating a beachhead for her forces when they enter the system. It's unknown whether she is actually working with Savathun or if this is all just for her own ends. But we do know that after the Season of Arrivals, Savathun disappeared. In the messages from the darkness itself referred to her as being petulant. And Osiris actually says, quote, "The Black Fleet intends to punish Savathun for interfering with its efforts to communicate with us. No one knows where the Witch Queen is, not even her own court. And now Xivu Arath is using this opportunity to consolidate her power." But it's unclear how exactly he would know this. From everything in Imolent, it seems that he was barely just learning about Xivu Arath and her forces before we find him. So most likely throughout this season, and possibly throughout the rest of the year, we'll learn more about what Xivu Arath is trying to do. At this point, anything I say would be speculation, and I don't want to go down that road very much right now. So, that's basically it. That's where we stand as of now with the Season of the Hunt. Of course, as things progress, we'll probably get more lore drops, either in-game or on the web, and if need be, I'll cover those too. So, I want to thank you all again for watching this video. I want to thank my patrons for helping support me. If anybody else would like to help support me, you can go to my Patreon page. I'll link it here. It's patreon.com/meromorphic. You can also visit me on Twitter and follow me there. You'll get updates on when I'm posting videos and other little things, notes that I can't really post here on YouTube. Keep an eye out for The Last Days on Kraken Mare. That should be coming out in the next few days. And I'll see y'all then.